One of the big outcomes of last week's election is that there's a large number of people who voted for the Republicans who don't trust the Republicans. That's some good news. And we'll go to the mailbag. You wrote to us, we'll talk back.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
I've been in the religious right as a political activist, as a pro-life activist, for 30 plus years, all right? It feels like a long time, and then it feels like it's gone by like that. But I can remember the thunder of the moral majority under Jerry Falwell's leadership. I mean, shaking things up, affecting the outcome of elections. Incredible, incredible powerhouse. Then came Operation Rescue. We were a threat. I founded Operation Rescue. I led the largest civil disobedience movement in American history. We had over 75,000 arrests in a 7-year span for peacefully protesting outside of abortion mills, sitting in, praying. We would meet with members of Congress. Janet Reno, when Bill Clinton got elected and Janet Reno became the Attorney General, at her first press conference, she said that her number one mission as Attorney General was to break the back of Operation Rescue. She didn't use those exact words, but that's in effect what she said. And she set out to do it, and they did it, okay? They did it. We were a force, but they outgunned us. Then came the Christian Coalition under Pat Robertson and Ralph Reed. And in the beginning, they were something. They really were. And they helped with some key elections. But they sold out pretty quickly and started getting behind the election of pro-abortion Republicans. And that turned a lot of people sour. I remember when Newt Gingrich in '94 led the takeover of the U.S. House with the contract with America. And there was a lot of hope. There was a lot of hope. And the Clinton years tended to unify people. We would stand against him. We would browbeat him. There was a lot of protesting going on. And then came George W. Bush. We won the presidency. We won both houses of Congress. And then came 9/11, 2001. When Bush won the presidency, there was this general sense of, oh, all right, we got rid of Clinton. We control both houses of Congress. Things are going to be okay. And the religious right, as a movement, as a political powerhouse, began to quickly disintegrate. And right now, if you look at the horizon, right now, today, the Christian right, as a cohesive political movement with the likes of Jerry Falwell and D. James Kennedy and and Dr. James Dobson, Pat Robertson, it's gone. Cardinal O'Connor, Jerry Falwell's dead, D. James Kennedy is dead, Cardinal O'Connor is dead. We're not a threat anymore. There's no cohesion. There is very little fierce, outspoken, courageous leadership. It's pretty bleak. A lot of it has turned into a fundraising machine, a toothless lion. So along comes the Tea Party. Thank you, God, for the Tea Party. And many pro-life activists and pro-family Christian right activists went into the Tea Party because there was no other real legitimate game in town, all right? And there's a lot of people that are saying now the Tea Party's had its day and it's over and blah, blah, blah. I'm not giving up so quick. I'm not giving up so quick. But here's that was a long way for me to say simply this. Thank God that the Tea Party and the remnants of the religious right and the remnants of conservatism, are all saying, we don't trust the Republicans. When Newt Gingrich came into power in 1994, Veni Vici Vendi, that's what I said. I was on the outside. I said, this man is going to sell us out. He's not going to bring any fundamental ethical change. And I was right. When John Boehner was elected as the Speaker of the House in 2010, I took a delegation of about 10 people. We went to his office. We met with his chief of staff. You can find the press reports. There was media in the room. And we said, look, you can either honor your word to defund Planned Parenthood, or we will count you as our adversary, and we will run someone in a primary against you in 2012. It was cordial. It was very direct. Well, as we know, Boehner betrayed us, caved into Obama, didn't want to be the House Speaker of No, and we then went and had a sit-in at his office. We protested Boehner because after Boehner betrayed us, none of the major pro-life, pro-family groups said a single syllable to rebuke him. None. So we were saying all along, he's going to betray us, he's not our friend, and again, we were right. Well, now, 4 years later, after Boehner, 20 years after Gingrich, people are starting to catch up. They're starting to say, yeah, these guys really aren't trustworthy. They really aren't patriots. There are a handful that are. Most of them aren't. Mitch McConnell certainly isn't. John Boehner certainly isn't. So here's the deal. We've got Republicans in charge of both houses of Congress now. 2 years left to the Obama presidency. What can we do not to influence Obama? That's a lost cause. What can we do to have an impact on the Republicans? How can we hold their feet to the fire? I'm going to give you direct marching orders, or at least examples and suggestions when we come back from this break.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah.
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
Are you, am I, are we willing to be fools for Christ? My observation after 30 plus years on the front lines of America's culture wars, and another 5 or 6 years before that of preaching publicly, of doing a lot of street evangelism, missions work, my observation is that people, Christian people, some people who love the Lord a lot, tend to hold their tongue when they should be speaking. There's a fairly famous quote from Martin Luther. I know that many of us aren't fans of Martin Luther on all levels, but he had a great quote. He said, "If I confess Christ, but I do not defend the one point that at that moment the devil is attacking, then I am not professing Christ, no matter how much I may be talking about him." That's slightly paraphrased, but only so. You can Google it, you'll find the phrase. So if the devil's attacking a certain point, like Jews being killed in Nazi Germany, and you're having a potluck supper at the Lutheran church and talking about intercessory prayer, but you're not defending the Jews, not standing against anti-Semitism, are you in fact doing what God wants you to do? So, this is my advice to you. If you want to have an impact and play a part in holding the Republicans' feet to the fire, lift up your voice and be ready to be a fool for Christ. And by that I simply mean this. Start writing letters to the editor. Start making phone calls to your local talk radio. Write some flyers and distribute them. Post your blog in your area. Lift up your voice saying that my new Republican senator or my Republican House member, put their name in. The question is, will they really fight against Obama's agenda? Or will they be a squish and will they compromise? Like the Democrats have been trying to browbeat them into doing. Hold their feet to the fire. And if you really want to have a part in defining the debate, then hold a protest at the congressional office in your community. Every single House member, there's 435 members of the U.S. House, okay? Every House member has at least one district office in the area where you live, where they represent you, okay? It's going to be 10, 20, at the most 30-minute drive for most of us, unless you're in one of those huge, expansive areas like in Nebraska or Montana or something. But it's close. Go there or go to your U.S. Senator's office. And most U.S. Senators have anywhere from 4 to 7 offices in a given state where they're staffed. And you can go and meet with one of the Senate staffers. Go in front of their offices with 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 of your friends and hold up signs and say, we demand Senator so-and-so or Congressman so-and-so defund Planned Parenthood. Or we demand that they stand against Obama's religious tyranny. Figure out something that you want to create the debate. Have a protest in favor of the Keystone Pipeline. Or have a protest that says, we want them to do these 6 things, okay? Stop the homosexual marriage juggernaut, stop the shedding of innocent blood by funding of Planned Parenthood, defund Planned Parenthood, open up the Keystone Pipeline, put boots on the ground to fight against ISIS in Iraq, and no to illegal immigrants getting amnesty. Those 5 things. Pick those 5 things, have a protest in front of your congressman's office, give the soundbite, read your little list as quick as you can, and say, these are our demands. And if they don't do it, if Mr. So-and-so doesn't do it, or Mrs. So-and-so doesn't do it, then we will find a primary candidate to run against them in 2016 for the House and whatever year it is for the Senate. Just threaten them. I mean, this is politics. This is war by another means. Remember, we have elections so that we don't have to kill people, so that we don't have to have a violent transformation of government. But it's still war by another means. And if you want to impact the debate and you want to define the debate, then you've got to be willing to be a fool for Christ. You've got to be willing to have enemies. You've got to be willing to have people say, oh, they're an extremist, or why can't they, just be happy that we have control of Congress? No. The thing that's made me so happy as I've listened to the news over the last few days is that it's not 1994. People aren't going, yay, Newt Gingrich. It's not 2000. People aren't going, oh, Bush is elected and we have both houses of Congress. People are saying, we put the Republicans in, but I don't trust them. All right, well, here's the chance to start to really put pressure on them now, right now, in front of their offices, letters to the editor, phone calls, but more importantly, do press conferences and protests in front of their office. Get in the news, get on TV, get on the radio, get in your newspaper, and define the debate. Put heat to them now. Put their feet to the fire now. Make them uncomfortable now. Because that's how you send the message from the grassroots that'll percolate up. And maybe, just maybe, some of them will become the party of no. No, Mr. Obama, no. you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Well, let's close out the program looking at our mailbag, at least a little bit. We get a lot of comments. Some of them are pretty far out there. Here's one just to toot my own horn. Jerry said, "You are a religious nut and a felon." Jerry, I admit I have been arrested nearly 50 times. I have spent over a year of my life locked up in various jails and prisons, prison work camps, both as a federal prisoner and as a state prisoner, but no, I'm not a felon. I have been arrested twice, charged twice with a felony, trumped up charges, conspiracy, and both of those were thrown out. So all of my convictions are misdemeanors. That's why I still get to vote, and that's why I haven't spent all that much time in jail. David Thoreau, when he was in jail for a night or two for refusing to pay a tax, one of his friends came to visit him, and somebody paid the money for him. But when they came to visit him in jail, he said, "What are you doing here?" Because he was making a protest against slavery. And David Thoreau's answer was, "Why aren't you in here with me? Why aren't you in here with me?" There's that famous phrase, "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing." So early on in my life, when I was in my mid-20s, I realized that going to jail was going to be required if we were going to create the social tension that was necessary to help end child killing. And so I was arrested many times for peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience. Nonviolent. Sitting in front of an abortion mill door and saying, "We're not going to move, because if we move, they're going to kill babies in there today." Things like that. And, you know, I took pages right out of the playbook of Dr. Martin Luther King, who was arrested many times. His followers, his co-belligerents were arrested, fighting against segregation and the Jim Crow laws. And other people in American history, certain abolitionists and people with the Underground Railroad were arrested during the fight against slavery. Many women were arrested, demanding the right to vote. So peaceful civil disobedience is a part of the American experiment in self-government. And frankly, if we are going to get our country back, there are going to have to be a few more people that are willing to put their freedoms at risk, are willing to go to jail. And it's not fun, but it's part of the fare, okay? It's part of the cost of doing business if we're going to create a crisis of conscience and help change the law. At least it's worked in America, and it's worked in other nations as well. So, and one other thing before I take a quick break. I tried to use my time wisely when I was in jail, and I wrote probably 5 different books in my different jail stints, whether I was a federal prisoner or a state prisoner, and most of them you can read online. So if you want to see how I used my time when I was in jail, go to our website and take a look. I'll be right back. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years, and sadly we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it. It is better to have an ambitious plan than none at all. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back, friend. If you're a new viewer, I want to encourage you, please go to our website and take advantage of the materials that we have there. Archives of the show, you can search by topic, you can read books that I've written in a PDF format online. We're not in this for the money. We're in it to hopefully change the course of your life, and then maybe you can become a leader that changes the course of your community or your state or even this whole nation. One more thing from the mailbag. Hate to break it to you, but the American people have always been on the wrong side of justice. The abolishment of slavery, civil rights, women's rights, etc. All of those movements were unpopular during their day, and yet they were absolutely right. Well, she is right. The writer is correct. There have been times, such as, in my opinion, the second most egregious deal with hell that the American people ever made was when they enshrined slavery in the Constitution. There's no question that the U.S. Constitution in its original writing was, as some of the agitators for justice said, a compact with hell. It enshrined slavery. Man-stealing, kidnapping, is a capital crime in the scriptures. It deserves the death sentence. And yet, the founders of this republic, in order to reach a compromise, to have the current Constitution, those people, just think today, Democrats and Republicans, those people compromised with the 3/5 clause of the U.S. Constitution, which said that a black slave counted as 3/5 of a person for the purpose of determining how many congressional seats there would be, all right? But that those people could not vote. Talk about an incentive. Talk about giving the slave power an unholy preponderance of political power, because by the time the Revolution or the Civil War broke out, there were nearly 3 million slaves. All right, so they counted in the census as 3/5 of a person, which gave more congressional seats, more House seats to the slave power than they really should have had based upon voters. If they wanted to give them, if they wanted to have those black people count as a person and then be able to vote, no problem. But they didn't want that. So it took a civil war to reverse that. It took a lot of heartache. It took a lot of bloodshed, a lot of loss of treasure, because slavery was an inherent evil, and our forefathers sinned against God and man to create it. Fast forward to today. What sins against God and man are our leaders in Washington, D.C. bringing upon us? And what horrific price will we pay for their evils? We've got to stand against them, fight against them, and prevail for justice.